people love them, some people hate them. This time, filters for the Osmo Pocket 2. Hi. Some people don't like the idea of using a filter on the front of a camera because they think that having that extra piece of glass or resin on the front is going to really pull the picture quality down, and actually in some cases it can do. So what they prefer to do is they would prefer to get the picture into the camera as best as possible and then fix it in post. The problem with fixing it in post is if you're using an 8-bit camera, you're pulling the bits about to change colors and things. So sometimes it's actually nice to get it in the front end when you take the picture, so that you've got less post to do. Therefore, the picture hopefully hasn't been degraded too much by the fact that you've got a filter on the front. It's a kind of a compromise. So these filters I'm looking at today are filters for the Osmo Pocket 2. Some of them were for the Osmo Pocket 1, and actually DJI don't guarantee that those filters are actually usable on the Osmo Pocket 2. And the reason for that is not just because of the lens itself, but because when you've got a filter on the front of the Pocket 2, when you turn it off, the head, instead of going into itself and inside the gimbal, the head actually goes the other way and stays out. With some of the filters, the head won't do that, so therefore they're saying basically if the head comes in and the filter hits the body of the gimbal, it could damage the gimbal. So I've tried some out, and I know that some work and some don't, but I'll point them out in this video so you'll know, and therefore it'll be safe to use with the Pocket 2. So the first one I'm going to take a look at is the Freewell wide-angle lens. Now this one is also sold by Osmo or DJI because it is compatible with the Pocket 2. So therefore when you shut the Pocket 2 down, the camera does as it's supposed to do and faces outwards. It's got a slight barrel effect on the front of the lens and it stays on pretty well. So I'm going to show you some footage I've taken with this one. This is the Freewell wide angle lens. Particularly take note of the corners. If you look at the corners and the sharpness, that will give away perhaps that I'm using a wide angle. And what I've done is I've taken a wide angle shot and then the same shot with the standard lens with the wide angle taken off, so you can see how much the thing has moved, how much more you're taking in. But particularly look for barreling when lines get bent, and for not distortion, but for unsharpness, especially in the corners, in the four corners, you might get a bit of unsharpness. Have a look at this footage. This is the Freewell. DJI make their own version of a wide angle lens, and both of them are on their site. So if you go there, you'll see two versions of a wide angle lens. One is that Freewell we've just taken a look at, and the other one is this one. It's a rather smart looking one. It's a bit flatter looking than the Freewell, and this is the DJI version. Now again, do the same thing. Look for the distortions of lines bending, because that can happen barreling with these lenses, but also look into the corners. Now this one I think is about £10 more than the Freewell, but in my opinion this is probably a better buy, because if you take a look at the corners especially, that's where it really shows with these lenses, and I think this one is quite a bit sharper. Take a look at this footage. set of filters that I use, especially with the Pocket 1, but not recommended by DJI for the Pocket 2, are the Polar Pro filters. These ones are neutral density, ND filters, but they're also polarizers. And what they do is they bring out the sky, if you've got a blue sky, beautifully, or if you've got white clouds, the white clouds really stand out against the blue sky. Or if you're looking into a lake or water, you can look through the water rather than get reflections. So these can be very useful. But again, you've got to be very careful with the Pocket 2, because if you put one of these onto the Pocket 2, it may not close properly. So what happens is the head comes round to close, the filter then hits the gimbal, and the head then becomes jammed, and you don't want that. Normally when you've got a filter on that's compatible, they face outwards so they don't come round to hit the gimbal. DJI do produce some ND filters for the Osmo, but they're not polarizers. So these are both ND filters and polarizers at the same time. These are fantastic for the Pocket 1. Be very cautious with the Pocket 2. So here's some footage using the polarizer. Take note of the sky. You've got a lovely blue sky. You can take advantage of it. Now for cloudy days, especially in the UK, we get these horrible white skies, just white. And when you photograph land, what you're doing is you're bringing the exposure up, so the sky goes even whiter, and you have to sometimes even just let it blow out. That's a blooming pain. It doesn't look nice. It's not a nice look to have a blank white screen at the top there and then pictures at the bottom that you're looking at. So with white skies, you've got to be very careful. So for that reason, I do use graduated filters. And what a graduated filter is it's an ND filter basically in the top half of the lens. So it's darker up there and it's see-through down here. Now those things are really handy for bringing out subtle details in grey skies. Very often in a grey sky there are subtle details that cameras don't pick out because the contrast ratios are too high. So you just get this white blank look. Now these ones are made by Skyreet. Now these two, this is the curious thing, it comes in a pack of 3. And the densities are labelled as ND4 at the top, ND8 at the top, and ND16 at the top, and clear at the bottom. And I don't think you'll be able to see this on camera, but they are actually graduated. If I show you them, that's what they look like. Again, I'll say it's made by Skyreet. Now, the curious thing about this one, it's not recommended by DJI to use them with the Pocket 2, but I found such a curious thing. First of all, the ND4 works. The ND8 doesn't, and the ND16 works. Now, as it happens, I tend to use the 16. I like to bring the sky down, and you get a much more even sort of exposure if you bring that top half down. So I put normally the ND16 on, and thank goodness that one actually does work. And if you put it on the Pocket 2, it closes with the head facing outwards, so it works. So the Skyreets work, but not the ND8. It must be something to do with the weight, I think. I'm not quite sure what triggers the action of that head to close inwards or outwards, but something about the filter triggers that. And this compatibility thing that DJI go on about is something to do with that closing procedure, how it recognizes. I tried to get out of them what it was that the camera was recognizing, but they wouldn't tell me. They just said, don't use things that aren't compatible. Which is a shame, because I use the graduated filter actually quite a lot. The graduated filter can also double up actually on a sunny day, because when you've got those blue skies with the white clouds, if you've got a graduated filter on, it again brings out that blue sky. Not quite the same way as a polarizer does, but it's handy. So these shots were taken using an ND16, but a graduated filter. You could see the effects of the filters in my little short videos, and you could see what they were doing exactly, because they can be very, very handy in the conditions that we get here. We can get very blue skies and bright days, but we can also get these horrible grey days, and cameras find especially the horrible grey days quite difficult to contend with, because those skies are so bright while the land is so dull. So there's a massive contrast range, which is why I use as I said earlier, the graduated filters. So I hope it was useful to you. I don't worry so much about the effect of the glass on the picture, because I don't see too much of that happening. They're mostly pretty good. The Skyreet, the DJI especially, that wide angle is superb. They're pretty good, and they don't really affect the picture too massively. I think the weakest one is possibly the Freewell, which I don't actually use, because the DJI one is better. I would love for DJI to come out with a set like my Polar Pro that are compatible, where you've got the ND filter plus the polarizer on the same filter. That would be fantastic. But those things can be so useful when you're out and about photographing and videoing, and they really can improve the picture an enormous amount. And I tend to use them quite a bit actually. So I hope this was useful to you, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching. Cheers for now.